going to combust on live YouTube?
That would be amazing. She left the
That would be the highest view show ever. That might go viral.
That might. You know, that video I did with a friend today, she had 2,000 views. I asked her how she did it. We did a video down in Creek. We did Reiki healing. Shares it, so I called her. And she's done over 2,000
You
views.
ask her how I'm a novice at this with YouTube, so
Ed knows how to do it. He's got a bunch of stuff on YouTube.
I think I've got so low.
welcome to the Sedona Soul Sister Show, down to earth discussions on metaphysics, paranormal, and spiritual topics.
The Sedona Soul Sisters are myself, Rosin Reynolds, my business partner, Ivory New, and our intrepid sweet mate, Darian Russell. So we have offices here in Sedona, Arizona, and obviously we're in our office, and we see clients here from all over the world. And we try to only be of service, but to educate.
Mm-hmm.
And today's topic is Ascension. So if you have any questions and you're watching live, you can leave them in the chat box, or you can always message our Facebook page and leave them there, and we'll get back to you.
Sure will. That is a massive topic right there. Everybody wants to know in the process, how am I doing? Am I working? Am I getting there? Probably. If you're even asking that question, I think you're on the road to ascension. So what do we want to say about that today?
I feel like, there's a lot, I actually feel like there's a fair amount of confusion about this issue for people, because I'm getting, and we've laughed about this with our clients, but I mean, people come in sometimes and they're just like going, I think I'm going crazy. And they don't know what's happening to them, and they're either fearful or they're thinking, they're having a mental health issue or something is going on. When in reality, as this ascension process continues, which is the rising of our consciousness, basically, and the veils thinning between the different dimensional fields. So I've had a lot of people come in and say, I hear people talking, like I hear voices, and I think I'm going crazy, and I'm going, okay, you're not, because I've been hearing that all my life. And some of us just hear in a little bit broader spectrum than other people, and there are a lot of people experiencing that right now.
Yeah, and very quickly too. I was going to say a lot of my clients that come in are experiencing it's happening like just rapidly, and they're sort of overwhelmed by it.
And that's the part that makes them go, I think I'm going crazy. And that's how I felt. I've told you, that's not what I was going to say, but in the 80s, when I had my massive awakening, like I'm seeing these, beings from other dimensions and communications from these things and all this, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wasn't working in mental health at that time. I was still working in radio, and I went to a counselor, and I think I might be going crazy. And she's like, you're not. Here's what that is. And of all the people that I could have gone to in that town, she was probably the only counselor that was there that knew what that was and could help me. And she's like, you need to find a spiritual teacher, which I did. I'm my first mentor and got on the track there. But I was going to talk about something that I was watching on Gaia TV yesterday that kind of ties into this. And they were talking about, they were interviewing people, a lot of children, but some adults too, but mostly children, who are seeing, they're calling them bubbles, light bubbles. But when they draw them and describe them, it's the way I see angels a lot. It's a ball of light, colored light, mixed lights with movement in it. And some of them are seeing orbs in different colors, and they're hearing these beings talking to them. And this guy went on to talk about it. The scientist is just talking about how out of the whole spectrum of light that exists, the human eye generally sees 2% of it. And so when we can see these things that other people don't, it's just that we've gotten to a point where we can see more of the light frequency than others are seeing yet. So I think a lot of people are just rising up and getting to this point, whether it's their frequency or their desire to see it, their willingness. I think it might be a combination of all of that, but they're seeing so much more as well, and so that's part of it too. But I was talking to a friend last night, and she's not new age, and this is all new to her, and she's going through that. And so it's very interesting to have all these different perspectives coming in at the same time, but it's all about ascension. Bottom line.
I think one important aspect of that is the realization that we are not alone. You know, there are many there. Not only are we not alone from out there, but
Yes.
we're not alone here. I mean, there are many other people experiencing this at this point. A lot of people, depending on the region of the country you're from, and you know where you feel comfortable to talk with people who you feel like you can communicate. I think it's helpful to find other people experiencing the same thing, because that's when it really hits you that, like, whoa, this is really happening. And it's not just happening in my little realm of the world.
Right.
It's a very large, broad spectrum of people, and it's increasing all the time.
And you can feel very isolated too, like you. When I
Yeah.
started my ascension, I felt very isolated. There was nobody around me at that time that was
Mhm.
spiritual or like-minded that I could say, "Hey, this is what's going on. Have you ever experienced it?" They would have said, "No,
Weirdo.
you're crazy. You're losing your mind." So I think now that it's more prevalent, people are talking about it. They're saying, because there's so much dark in the world too. I think people are really searching. There's got to be good in the world. There's got to be light and love.
It's
So they're
all
looking.
around us.
Hmm.
That light and love is all around us. And we have so much celestial, spiritual, interplanetary support along that
Mhm.
that it's mind blowing. But another thing I was going to say too, that's part of this as well, along with hearing things and seeing things. I'm having I started hearing celestial music, which I've only heard when I'm doing mediumship and I'm really like looking at the afterlife, experiencing the afterlife. But I'm starting to hear celestial singing and music just hanging around my house. And then clients started telling me they're hearing music, but I said, can you describe it to me? It's like nothing I've ever heard before. It just brings me to tears, and it's and I get them to describe it, and it is the same kind of thing, like all these just incredibly beautiful harmonies and instruments playing that you don't even know what the instruments are, and there's something about it that just vibrates the heart chakra at this powerful level that just opens your heart. So that's happening as well, you know. And I think part of the confusion is religion. Like I was raised Catholic, and in the Bible it talks about their view of ascension is that whole thing of being, taken up, only a certain number of people being taken
Only a
up
few
into heaven.
special.
Yeah, and that's confusing. It's hard to separate from that view to what we know it to be at this very far advanced point in history. So I think it's hard to let go of that.
It's it 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 also requires a realization that, and I was glad that you mentioned the words new age. I've always told people I'm the most un-new age person.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm just
I mean,
not.
but that is a terminology that a lot of people ascribe to what's happening.
Mhm.
And it's, in our culture, it's a tendency that we have and that we're raised with to kind of hear something, pass judgment, and then put it in a little pigeonhole. And you can't really do that with this because it's a very personal experience. But it's also, when it's worldwide, like what we're hearing from people who come here to Sedona from all over the world, this is an amazing shift of energy.
Angels just came in. I'm just covered in that hard
Mhm.
angel chills about that confirming that. But what? So let's talk about that. Like what we talked about what ascension is. That it's this awakening. It's enlightenment. What happens when you ascend? You are awake. It's really about being more fully awake. That you are aware. You start realizing that a lot of the things that we focus on in modern life are not what life is about. They're not important, and letting go of a lot of that. And I think one of the big ones early on, and it can continue, is when you start wanting to get rid of things. That's often a sign that you're moving into an ascension process. Is things, material things, and having all this money and just continuously working to accumulate stuff, that then you got to take care of the stuff and keep track of the stuff, and it just doesn't do it for you anymore. So that's hardly the only symptom, but that's certainly one.
But piggybacking on that, like the feeling of loving yourself finally. Where
Huge.
it's like getting rid of all that baggage and those old conditioned beliefs that kept you down, or people that kept you down, and now I'm loving myself more. I'm doing what's best for me. I don't care what other people think. I'm not going to be told what to do. So getting into that part of ascension as well
so
is a beautiful
important.
part.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because I think before, maybe the last year or two, I would say that I would have maybe 10 to 15 people a year come in who are going through this. And now most people who are coming in are going through this.
Yeah, I think that's important to realize. I also think, you know, the points that you're making are also, it's more than just letting go of the need or the desire for material stuff. It's also realizing that people that you maybe have known a long time in your life, all of a sudden you can't relate to those people anymore. You can't, there's no connection there, and they're in a process of staying, the same, and your mind, body, and spirit literally is taking off into new dimensional fields, and you can't even after a while have a conversation.
Some people get stuck in that process that I consider as a part of spiritual cleansing, and they get stuck in that particular one because they think it's immoral. It's unconscionable to turn your back to walk away from a family member, or sometimes it's whole families. Sometimes that's what happens, or your job or old friends. But I say it again, I've mentioned this before, but if you are not getting anything out of that relationship, or it's painful for you, you can bet they're feeling discomfort with it too. Only they don't have any consciousness as to what's going on, so they don't know why. It will be a relief to both of you to bless them and walk away. And it's okay. Not everybody's meant to be in your life your whole life. Not even families sometimes. As painful as that can be, it's very freeing and healing. And people will get stuck.
Yeah.
Not
Very
wanting
tough,
to make that move that they really need to make. Then when they do, it's like the world opens up.
A burden
and
off your shoulders.
Oh,
you feel
yeah.
so much lighter. You can feel
That's when
it.
they start getting the self-esteem. They start liking themselves, forgiving themselves, and really seeing a lot. You can't be in it and work on it at the same time very well.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's like staying in. It's like keeping an infection and healing, being completely healed of it at the same time. You can't. That's all.
I also think we don't stop loving the people that our family and our friends, and we still love them tremendously. We still care for them, but you do reach this point where you realize, okay, we don't really have anything to talk about anymore. And I have some clients who are going through this now, and it's so heartbreaking. It's so difficult because they want to talk about everything
Sometimes
that's
it's
going on.
spouses too. That's really hard.
And yeah, it's just it's a process, and I think having patience with yourself and with the people in your life, your friends, your family, is an important aspect of this, because you can't expect, I mean, you're really going through a revolution, and you can't expect
You're
everyone
changing.
to move that way.
You're going to become
the
something
times.
else. When we are all vibrating energy. Everything in the world is vibrating energy. And sometimes I see it that way, where everything is vibrating energy. So I know that. But when your vibration changes, your frequency changes, that means you are changing. And so you've got these people who aren't even ready to put a toe on the spiritual path, let alone open themselves up to things that they can't see or put their finger on and touch, and just to even acknowledge that those things might exist even though they haven't experienced it yet. You are in very different places. It doesn't mean it won't change down the road. Very often people decide later to step on that path, and sometimes they zoom forward and then they can be in your life again. I've had that happen. But there's a lot of things. The other thing is your diet. I think we've talked about this before too, but not about ascension. But we've talked about not having, not being able to tolerate dark energy and violence and negative news and negative, dark, violent movies and scary books and movies. It's all about guarding your energy better as your frequency raises. You have to be more protective of it because it's like a fine-tuned instrument that's more sensitive. So you're affected more strongly. So you have to protect your energy, which is why it comes down to at some point needing to make these changes. But it's all good. It's okay.
It is.
It's great. Wonderful things lie beyond making those moves you need to make, and just being ready to do it. When it's time, you won't be able to not make that move.
Because it's growth.
Yeah.
You're growing, you're expanding your consciousness, and your ability to see and perceive things is expanding. And it's challenging from the standpoint too that these long time established rules, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, are suddenly in your face, and you're realizing I can't do that anymore. I just can't. I don't fit here. One of the things I was going to bring up also is I've had a number of clients experience these challenges in their work environment.
Oh, yes.
And that gets really tough because most of us aren't in a position to just, leave our job. But sometimes when it's obvious that you don't fit in there anymore, whatever the goal of that company is, or it's really stressful.
And then it can become toxic too and make you ill. And then it takes on a whole new meaning, and
Yeah.
you really dread going to work and being in that environment.
And then
nobody wants to feel like that.
Not only will you not make further progress with yourself, but you'll be at a standstill. You might even regress. Being in that toxicity has such a negative effect on you. And that gets more true. We were just talking about this, and going to Walmart as an example. Sorry, Walmart. But sometimes I give Walmart visits as a challenge to my empath students to see how well they're able to protect themselves with these certain techniques. And that is crowded places where there's a wide mix of energy and a lot of people who might be upset about things or angry. That's
Stressed.
another time you've got to really watch the type of crowds you're around and how many people and what is it like. How do you feel? Tuning into what you're feeling in different situations is critical to your ascension.
And we've touched on this before too, but anytime you go into a large place of business like that, your exposure to electrical energies, electromagnetic frequencies, all those cash registers are giving off frequencies, the lights, the everything. So you've got a lot going on at that point where maybe you're not comfortable exactly with that whole spectrum of exposure, and you do start to notice that a lot more as you move through this ascension process.
Yeah.
I can't even get through big stores like this, and I've said this before. I have to have organite in my purse. I have to have
A list in her hand.
And even then, sometimes I don't leave with everything on that list because I'm getting brain fog by the time I'm in the back of the store.
I tell my husband, 5 minutes. I'm in and I'm out. Do not talk to anybody. I just want to get in.
Don't
and
slow
out.
down.
You see somebody you know, you wave, we move on.
Because it can be very heavy at
Debilitating.
times. Mhm.
It's really stressful. So these are all things to realize, and I think one thing too is if you can locate, and I know this is incredibly difficult for people who live in certain parts
Mhm.
of the world, the country, but if you can locate other people who can give you kind of like some moral support, some feedback of like, oh my gosh, this is what's happening with me too. You'll start to realize that, we're sort of in this together, and it's good to connect with fellow experiencers of ascension process so that you can relate and you can talk about it.
I have clients who ask me, what is Ascension for? Like, what's the purpose of it? So I think we should touch on that. I think you have to kind of go back to what's the purpose of life. I would say it's to improve ourselves every lifetime, to overcome challenges and places we got stuck before, and how can we better, how can we help more people, how can we be truer to ourselves, how can we improve our ethics, how can we be kinder, more loving, more open-hearted. And then you're doing that, you're working on yourself, that naturally raises your frequency. So the more you raise your frequency, which is moving into ascension, the farther you go in this particular lifetime with your mission, which is be the best person you can, love the best you can, overcome the things that got stuck in previous lifetimes.
And do good works.
Yeah, do help wherever you
know,
can, do good
the-
things,
the
make the world
whole
a better place. And
The whole
or
point
maybe
of
break out the John Lennon song. I will.
I'll do it.
Yay! One thing I was hoping you would talk about a little bit, Terry Ann, is how your process of this whole ascension and awakening revolved around your need to heal your child.
Mm.
Because I went through this with my child, one of my children, who was much older than you. I mean, you just had a baby like a little infant, and um, the opening of our consciousness to realize that healing is a part of this. Our ability to send energy that balances, restores, clears, allows the body to put itself in a place of repair and healing itself. For those of you out there who have experienced this with a loved one, nothing will change your perspective faster than the reality that you need to heal your own loved one.
Yes, and yourself. I find with my daughter that as I started healing her, I always say this all the time, she's my greatest teacher because
I
she's
agree.
taught me in such a short time so much. As I was healing her, I began to heal myself. And so when I do ancestral healing on clients, we can heal going forward and we can heal going backwards. So the work you're doing on yourself is one of the most important works that you can do. And then healing your child or a loved one. Also, it's difficult sometimes when it is your child to sort of step out of that picture as a human. I'm still her mother, but as a spiritual being, I understand she has her journey. So there's things that I may not always be able to help or clear because it is her journey. So being able to step outside of that sometimes, can be difficult. But it's a journey for both of us, I think, and she has been my greatest teacher.
Yeah, I always said that about my kids, all of them, like I learned more in the process of parenting than I would have ever, anticipated. And I think as we move through, our adult life, that's one thing that we have these old established rules and customs, but when we're forced out of that, and then we are able to suddenly have our eyes unshielded. We see things we never saw before. And that goes back to this whole ascension process, because that is what ascension is. You're kind of put in a situation by what you are experiencing daily. I have a lot of clients who are going through amazing paranormal events that could be on TV. And I mean, it's definitely a whole new world when you step into that process of allowing yourself to acknowledge, hey, this is really happening. It's happening in my life, it's happening in my family's life, it's happening to my friends, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize it's happening worldwide.
Oh, it's
And that
massive.
becomes big.
That gives me such joy.
Yes.
Because yes, there's a lot of dark things going on, but there's a lot of people waking up. A lot of people waking up intentionally, raising their frequency.
Mhm. I still feel like the light is just pushing the dark to the surface. It's
I do
just showing.
too.
It's like,
yeah, it's
this
always
is
been
not what you
here.
wanna
You're just
be.
seeing this.
Right.
We're making
Yep.
you see it.
I
Mhm.
totally agree.
Yeah.
And as a part of that process, we have to deal with our fear too, because the fear of change, the fear of
It's a big one.
recognizing that these things that are going on, they are real, but they're not threatening. They're just things that we are being shown and we are experiencing. And if we can step out of that need for everything to remain the same and that fear based philosophy, we can really rise quickly.
Yeah, because a lot of
In
people
the
don't like
process.
change. Change is scary, and it can be huge. Huge change or little
Yep.
change. People don't like
But
to.
change is all around us all the
Mhm,
time.
all the time.
Sometimes it's very subtle
Mhm.
and it's slow and it happens so slowly and gracefully you don't even notice. And other
Hmm.
times it's in your face, but it's always there. So my thing with that, I like to say, and for myself as well, then take control of it. Step into your power and make the decisions for yourself. Don't wait. Don't be like a leaf in the wind on the water waiting to see which direction you're going to get blown in. You decide what you're going to do, how you're going to get there, make your choices. That helps. Then you don't have this uncertainty. You're making your decisions, not just waiting to see what's going to happen.
It's pretty challenging though,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to be willing to step into that and to move forward with
Mhm.
everything.
We're saying a lot of things we've said in other shows, but it's because a lot of these topics interrelate so
and they
closely.
overlap.
So another thing we've talked about, and I think it bears repeating, is Roz was mentioning having a spiritual circle of people. Both of Roz and Terry mentioned having a circle of people who understand this journey. That's a spiritual circle. So if you don't have that already, go to meetup.com. It makes it so easy. Enter spiritual and how far you're willing to drive and visit groups until you find one you like or start your own. I've started my own in 2 Arizona cities because there wasn't one. So I still have great friends from both of those circles. So you need people who are further ahead than you on this journey so that when you experience weird things like your whole body starts shaking and you're not scared and you don't know why, they can go, oh yeah, I had that, and here's what happens after that, and it's fine, and it's just part of the process. Or and somebody behind you is going to have the same thing and you're going to be able to go, oh, I had that too. It helps people to hear they're not alone with these odd things, and you don't feel so crazy and you don't feel like you're dealing with this all on your own. That's just not recommended.
And we are these energetic beings. We resonate energy. We put energy out and we take energy in. And so the sooner you realize that, you'll understand that you bring in those people on the vibration that you are now, that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are experiencing those things, it'll be great time to do a meetup or go on social media and look for your people.
Sometimes people tell me, I already have so many friends. I'm like, how many of them can you talk to about these? None of them. Then you need to add some new ones to the
Yeah.
mix. It can be a separate circle of friends. It doesn't mean getting rid of all your friends. It
Yes.
means finding some people who you can talk to freely, even if it's socially. It doesn't have to be anything structured. You could just get together and eat and talk. Have a potluck at somebody's house.
I feel like, you know, everything we try to bring to everyone's attention, it's until you start to really live that experience, you know it's happening when you hear it from other people, but when you're really moving through these different shifts, it's like a, an eye opener. And connecting with other people is really crucial, I think. And I feel like people have a tendency to just kind of withdraw, and um, I I feel like we as, spiritual beings, we have to be sending that energy out too. Like, okay, I send whoever needs my help. Send whoever needs to find a connection for themselves, and they will come.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So it's pretty cool.
It is cool. And then you're going to find yourself in a teacher role with somebody. I mean, it's just inevitable. It goes forward. Kind of sometimes you're the student, sometimes you're the teacher, and you can be both at once with different people. So that kind of brings me to another point that for a lot of people, that feeling of getting to the point where so much is happening, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going crazy. That's kind of a red flag that you're ready for a spiritual teacher of some sort as well, a mentor.
Really
So
good point.
we do that. The three of us, that's a big part of what we offer is mentoring for people on their journey for a variety of reasons. So that could be titled under spiritual counseling, mentor, but check that out. And if one of us resonates for you, fantastic. You might want to contact us about it. And if not, find somebody that does resonate for you, somebody that can help you until you feel like you really got a grip on this.
So you don't flip out.
And pay attention to your kids too, because the kids nowadays are coming in very
so
high
wise.
frequency,
Oh, yeah.
very old souls with. I'm just
Things
blown
they
away
say.
when I work with children, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like,
Yeah.
and